this is not my normal place to be giving a talk like this, but yeah, really excited to be here talking about field fleawort and also, yeah, trying to learn botany. So, oh, hang on, where's the first? Oh, there we go. So yeah, I mean, I think the first thing I should say is, unlike most of the speakers you probably have doing these talks, I am not an expert. So it's not just going to be a talk about plants, although, as I say, field fleawort's going to appear in it. But it's also about this kind of journey about getting into plants and the sort of hurdles that I realised I was facing that was sort of stopping me finding out more, because it's quite a daunting prospect when it's like botany, all of the plants, and then also just some of the leaps that I've sort of psychologically made and also practically to try and get over those some of those hurdles. So yeah, I'm going to do 0 to 39. I'm going to keep it potted history, so don't worry, we're not going to be here all evening. Here's me in the early 80s. I'm about 2 here playing, well, digging some soil, and I think I'm doing some weeding, not looking totally into it. But this was basically my sort of exposure to plants as a kid. My family were quite into gardening. You know, not big time, just, you know, got us outside. We like camping, walks in the country parks around Northamptonshire where I grew up, but in no way botanists or experts in anything to do with ID. So, you know, sort of general interest. But I was somebody that was always really into science, just loved science, loved maths, loved puzzles, really into how things worked. And yeah, my parents are just really into just encouraging that. So yeah, here I am in my wellies. And I still wear them now, not these ones, obviously. So that interest in science, that kind of evolved, it kind of went on, I stuck with it, went to university to study, I did natural sciences, but did zoology, not botany. Here I am with some snails and a friend. Charles Darwin, obligatory picture with him. Interesting thing I just sort of remembered thinking after finishing my zoology degree is how I didn't actually know how to ID any animals, which I think it's quite interesting how little identification is part of undergraduate degrees. So I did try and learn birds then after university, but there's a plant story in this too, because while I was at the end of my second year, I got my first sort of awakening to the wonder of plants and also surveying. And that was here in Panama. I went to BCI Research Station because one of the lecturers had a big study going on there. They were working in the rainforest and they had a series of plots. They were looking to see what role leaf litter had in sort of the carbon cycle and helping the trees grow. And so my job, along with a friend called Gabs, we went out there and we were measuring lots and lots of trees for like 8 weeks. So some of them had leaf litter added, some of the plots had leaf litter removed, and some were a control. And here's me painting one that had got big enough. And I mean, I have to say that was such an amazing time. And I think it's the first time I really thought about plants, because they're just so, I suppose even outrageous might be the right word. You know, there's trees with great big spikes coming out of the trunks. I mean, they're probably not spikes, I don't know the official name, but you know, they look like thorns all the way up, and there's like massive buttress roots and these lianas and all sorts of shapes and forms and colors, and obviously all the kind of wildlife around it too. So yeah, I mean, I loved it. And I even at that point was thinking, maybe I'll do a PhD. But you know what life's like. And I just did something totally different instead. I got a job at the BBC. I'd been working in radio and I'd been working in local radio. And then I basically started being a freelance reporter. I was freelance for years and used to kind of go off just doing all sorts of science stories. So I've been a science journalist now for 20 years. I don't think it's such a weird move from science into journalism. I think there's a lot of parallels. You know, it's the desire to learn things, you want to find things out, looking for evidence, sharing knowledge, you know, piecing different things together. And yeah, I mean, it's been amazing. I've met scientists all over the world. I mean, I picked a few pictures here. I mean, me in a studio talking to someone. The pink one here, this is in Bonaire in the Dutch Antilles. I was doing some different stories there, but these are salt basins where they for salt, and depending on the salinity, different things live in them, and this is the bacteria making it pink. This is me in the stores at the National Museum Scotland holding an actual dinosaur leg bone, which was just so exciting. It was just really exciting. And here's a baby mountain gorilla. I got funding to go and do a load of stories there in Rwanda. And so I traveled around there looking at the progress of the Millennium Development Goals and various stories to do with human-animal interactions. So yeah, it's been pretty amazing. But some of the other ones that really stuck with me as well were the ones where it's just basically going out with scientists, seeing scientists doing science things. So this one here on the left, this was a team in Austria, and they were working in the Tyrolean Alps, looking at where glaciers are retreating, and then what you're left with is a lot of bare rock. And they were going out and they were collecting data and monitoring to see the colonization, to see what's coming in, both plants and also mostly insects, and seeing where they've come from. Have they blown in on the wind, and how do they establish? And then this one here, this is a baby yellow-shouldered Amazon parrot, and I was with some scientists who were going out monitoring those, weighing them, and it was these times when people are collecting data, trying to find out what's going on. They've got their questions, that I kind of, felt myself thinking like, oh, I want to do this. This is really exciting. I would love to do this too. But, sort of felt a bit whimsical at that point. I wasn't, I was enjoying my job as well. So, I kind of didn't think much more about it. So that's all going on. And then now we're already up to my mid-30s by this point. So we're nearly there. I then clashed with plants and got a garden. So I've been living in a flat for years with no outdoor space. And then I moved and got a garden. And that garden didn't really have much in it because it was an old lady who'd lived in our house, and she had gardened, but over time it'd become too much, and it'd been, heavy weed suppressant, gravel. And, over the years, I just started digging it up, planting stuff, propagating things, planting trees, wildlife ponds. And I don't know, it was almost intoxicating. I'm sure it's like the entry-level drug for loads of people who come to plant like gardens. I was just obsessed with reading all the books, having a go at this, like trying out all these different methods. And I just thought it was amazing, boring people with my photos of like, look at my raspberries, look at my pears. It was just great. And I just, and even just being outside, I started to learn what the seedlings were before they'd grown into the plants, or sometimes I'd dig up seedlings and just wait to see what are they going to become. So yeah, I started to get to know some plants, but then that didn't feel like enough anymore. And so I started building gardens elsewhere. I've got a couple of daughters and they're in schools. So I started with this one here, building a school garden, doing raised beds, and ran a garden club there for about 3 years. And we grew all sorts. And it was my first sort of interaction with children and, well, other than my own, children and plants, and seeing them enjoying planting seeds, also seeing how many of them were really afraid to get their hands muddy. That was quite interesting to me, and just encouraging them to touch the soil, interact with the plants. Yeah, so that they really enjoyed it. And then I built another one as they went to junior school. So this is the second garden where we built raised beds. We cleared an area. We've made it into more of a woodland garden. I mean, it's still ongoing, actually, making dead hedges. And I think also it's been an opportunity to start saying to children, oh, do you know what this is? And so again, building from what I know to kind of share that knowledge. So yeah, it's becoming a big thing in my life, but I'm starting to feel this frustration because I want to share, I want to get out there, but I just realize I don't have enough knowledge. And yeah, then I hit 40 basically. And, moving into that different decade, you start thinking about your life. What have I done? Well, I feel like I've done a lot of stuff with my life, but you think about, what do I want to do? And yeah, for me, I felt like there were a few barriers. I felt like I wanted to know so much, but I just didn't know enough. So I've got a little list here. The rest of this talk now is going to be sort of based around these kind of barriers that I had. First of all, I felt a bit lonely. Now, there was lots of people in my life, obviously, but when it came to botany, it was very much, it was in a cycle of books, reading, doing by myself, mostly coming back to books. So, and I really, you get to a point where you can't really just keep learning from books. You need to meet some people who can say, this is a this is a that. So I was feeling a bit lonely, but I couldn't really get myself to go and talk to anyone. I felt overwhelmed. There are so many plants. I'd got the World Flower Key, the rose book, and got myself a hand lens. I tried going out, but honestly, where do you start? It's like picking up a dictionary. It just felt overwhelming. I also felt that I was too busy. Got a family, got a job, life. Maybe I haven't got time for this. Is this just another hobby? And also, I just wondered if is it just too late? I kind of wish I'd just done this 20 years ago and then I'd be in a better place. So anyway, here I am. I will say I'm only 41 now, so this is not a story where I say now I'm FISC level 6. Just spoiler alert on that front. But I have spent the past year, well, more like a year and a half now, coming up with different ways to try and get myself over these hurdles. So we are going to get onto that. First of all, I decided to go out and find some people to learn with. That was to make myself feel less lonely about it. So I did two things. There are lots of ways to do it. I wanted someone to teach me, I suppose. So I went to Shuttleworth to do a level 2 in practical horticulture, where I met loads of plant-loving people, which reaffirmed the fact there are other people out there, and it confirmed my sort of path in that sense. And it also gave me the first introduction to plant ID. It's not like using keys. It's very much like, here's a specimen, remember the Latin name, and I could do that. But it was good because it starts to build your confidence that at least you know the names of some plants. And then the second one that I did, which I have to say was a bit of a last minute decision. The deadline was in 2 weeks when I came across it, and I just was seized by this desire to want to do it. And this is the postgraduate certificate in Ecological Survey Techniques. I have zero regrets about doing this course. It was amazing. The whole gist of it is to learn how to survey different things in the environment. There is a whole plant section, but it also covers mammals and amphibians and reptiles, birds, and what have I missed? Invertebrates. So yeah, it sort of puts botany in the bigger picture, and I found that really interesting to see the kind of questions and problems and how it fits in. I met lots of people who are interested in those things. A real life botanist, as demonstrated in the images here. Yeah, the other thing that was really interesting about this is that it talked about data, which I suppose a lot of botany is about collecting data, but also very much about what to do with it. So what's it telling us? So there was a lot to do with like GIS and also statistics. And I think that's part of the story of plants. We can go and know about plants and find out information, but what's it telling us? So that was really interesting. There's no plant identification, but as I'll come to in a minute, this course particularly helped me with another one of my problems, basically being overwhelmed. So there we are on my checklist. Was a bit lonely, not anymore, tick. Now on to being overwhelmed. So many plants and no shortcuts. So the thing that course, that Oxford course, also helped me in my botanical journey was it helped me find a direction. Because I think a big problem with being overwhelmed is that you do pick up a key or a field guide and think, where on earth do I start? You're sort of aimless. It's like trying to learn a language and you've got no one to talk to. You just think, well, why am I even bothering? Whereas what this did, part of that course is you have to do an independent research project. And that meant you had to have questions, and that gave me a reason, it gave me a purpose. And I decided I wanted to do botany, and my purpose and direction came from this place, Knocking Hoe National Nature Reserve. And that's not far from where I live. So I had a little look online and found a phone number, and I just basically picked up the phone and just phoned the person on the end of the line and said, oh, hello, explained what I wanted to do. And they said, oh, I can't help you, but I know a man who can. He's called Graham Bellamy. So I was like, all right, have you got his details? I wrote to him, and Graham, he was the senior reserve manager for Notting Hill and also Barton Hills for like 35 years, and he's still there a lot. And he was so generous with his time, and he talked me through the different questions that he felt needed answering and introduced me to this plant, field fleawort. And as soon as he started telling me about it, it really lit up something in my mind, because I thought, my problem is I can't go out with a quadrat and just say what's in this quadrat, because I just don't know any plants. That's a massive barrier. But as soon as you have a plant that maybe people haven't looked at so much, I just need to know one plant, and that felt manageable. So for me, that was a big step in the right direction of feeling like, okay, I think I can do something here. A bit about field fleawort. I'm just going to tell you a bit about the project, because this is the botany bit, everyone, so that's good. Here it is. Well, here's some pictures. I mean, I'm not a botanical photographer, so you have to like make do with what I've got. On the right here, this is how they kind of sort of poke up above the grass, the surrounding sward. I should say this plant is not, this picture here is not representative. This is like the best one with loads of flowers on it. Most of them have about 3. Most people have said it looks a bit ragworty, which I suppose it is. So this is a plant that, Tephroseris integrifolia subspecies, this that I was looking at was integrifolia. There are many sort of Tephroseris species found kind of across Northern Europe, I think right into Asia. But this is the one we have here in the UK. There's one that's up in Anglesey, I think it's Maritima. But anyway, we're talking about this one. It's found on chalk grassland, likes quite poor soils. It's a perennial, but we know from the plant atlas as well and various studies that it is declining. But there doesn't seem to be much monitoring of it. In Europe, most of the studies are focused around Sweden and Germany, but here in the UK, I mean, as far as I could find, I mean, happy to be corrected, the only demographic study of like what the populations are doing was from one in Kent, a certain G.H. Morgan from 1965, and he spent a number of years looking at a population on Burham Down. That population isn't there anymore, because once the rabbits all got myxomatosis, there were no more rabbits, and then the downland turned to scrub, and then apparently it's now woodland there. So that population is extinct. So currently, from as far as I know, there were no studies at all of what's happening with any populations of field fleawort. So that all sounded great, but the issue I still had was I still didn't have a clue what it looked like, because I've never seen it. So having done my initial research, kept seeing this name, Pete Stroh, of the BSBI, which is how I first came to the BSBI to sort of find it. And I thought, right, well, I'm going to get in touch with Pete and see what he says. And again, he very graciously spent time explaining to me about the plant. He had worked on it himself, like looking at it as an indicator species within chalk grassland populations. And then he and Pete, and also Holly Bilcock, who works for Natural England at Notting Hill, they all came out and offered to help me find some of these and get me started. And I mean, it's very easy to get over enthusiastic, and believe me, I can get really enthusiastic about stuff. But decided to have a study in the end that tried to keep things simple. This is a plant that people don't really know much about. So, I think there's nothing wrong with just saying, okay, is it declining because some of the very basic natural historical reproductive aspects of this plant are not being fulfilled, i.e. it's not flowering, or, it's not making it to seed. So yeah, I decided that that's what I was going to look at. Here it is. Just want to show you a few pictures. I find it really amazing how it's not very often you just sort of see plants where you just literally have all the stages put in a series. I mean, maybe I'm not looking in the right places, but anyway, here's one I made for field fleawort. This is, here you see the rosette that sort of comes out in spring. It's got these sort of furry leaves, like looks like kind of cotton wool's got a bit stuck on them. It then sends up a single stem and flower stem, and then you have some sort of buds on top. The stem looks, I always think it looks a bit like someone's wearing drain pipe, so pinstripe trousers with little like sort of reddy coloured stripes. And then you get these flowers on a corym and these sort of lovely bright yellow, happy, jolly things. And then obviously later in the season you have this pappus, and this is where the seeds come from. And my questions were basically along the lines of like, are all the, you know, what proportion stay as rosettes versus actually flower, i.e. is the issue, is there an issue with flowering from site to site? I also want to see again, are they just not getting to the pappus stage for whatever reason across the 3 sites? And then also looking at the relationship between some of these things, like does the size matter? Does the grazing matter? Because there's conservation grazing, so I wanted to know about that. And then this is just to orientate us, this is from the plant atlas. You can see the chalk all around here. This is where field fleawort's been found. This is Bedfordshire, and we're right on the border with Herts, which is where I live actually. So, and this is Knocking Hoe. I had one here up on the hill. That's got an electric fence around it because there's lots of really amazing plants there that people don't want to get eaten by sheep. So that's got a fence. This one here has no fence, so it's just left to its own devices. And then this population is at Barton Hills Nature Reserve, and that has a fence, but just a plastic one. And they have horses grazing here. So that's where we are. So I looked at 150 plants, 50 at each site. This is on the top of Plum Pudding, which is at Barton Hills. Took a random sample. And the method I used, again, Pete suggested this, because this is used for the Autumn Ladies Tresses study, also at Knocking Hoe. It's been working for, I was going to say years, I mean like decades, where you have 2 posts in the ground, you get a tape measure, you get another tape measure, distance from 1, distance from 2, and then you triangulate. So sounded very sensible to me, so I did that and found my plants. And then I kept going back, and the things I was recording were things like the diameter of the rosette, number of leaves, height, the flowers, the pappus, and signs of grazing. And this is what a grazed one looked like. And I decided when I was doing that, I thought I had sort of read the odd bit of paper where it talks about different herbivores grazing to different heights. So I thought, maybe I'll just measure the height just in case it tells us anything. So I did that, and these were some of our potential culprits. I mean, obviously rabbits, this one. So I went out many times, and I have to say, from the newbie botanist perspective, just getting outside and just doing something with plants, I think is just such a big step, because it is just amazing. I mean, we did have really good weather this year. I mean, I just seemed to get lucky on nice days, but it was amazing. Even when it was going to rain, makes you measure a bit faster. I also took out people like my neighbour, like this is my neighbour Rosemary, this is my neighbour John, that's his foot. I kind of wrote people in. I got one of my friends from Woman's Hour, she came out with me. I got my family out, helping me survey. So it's quite a nice way to share it. And also people just come past. When you've got tape measures, people are just nosy. And so, you find yourself quite quickly talking about plants and thinking, wow, I'm a mini expert now. Just a quick thing through the results. What I found was that over 50% of the individuals of each of the sample flowered at each site. And based on other studies, that indicates a good year. They don't really like being very dry. They don't like drought. So obviously we had a very wet spring this year. So I think that was probably something to do with it. But the other key thing was there was no significant difference between whether or not they flowered between the sites. So whatever factors are influencing flowering, they were consistent, we can assume, between the different sites. So I think from the perspective of what's happening to field fleawort, why is it declining? I don't think it's that they're just not flowering, because, well, at least at this site, they are. I also found that the number of leaves, so i.e. a measure of the size, did matter. Those with kind of 6 or so and above were more likely to flower than those with sort of 5 or fewer. I mean, it wasn't directly predictive. And this also supports the findings of that Kent study from the 60s. I mean, you just have to do more studies to kind of find out if maybe it could give us a sense of, if we found a totally new population and found it all had 3, we might think maybe this population's not doing so well, but obviously that's me having a guess. The one where there was a real difference was in the production of pappus. So this purple one here is that's the one behind the electric fence, and most of those got to the pappus stage. This one here is the Barton Hills, which has the plastic fence. Still not great, like about 30%, but they did get to seed stage. And the one where there was no fence basically all got munched. So there's definitely some sort of interruption in the reproductive cycle here. And so that made me really glad that I bothered to measure the stem height, because then I thought, oh, the nibbled bits, because I thought, oh, well, we might have something here. So I decided to do a scatter plot of these per site. And then also this dashed line here, this shows from the various papers the kind of minimum height you would expect grazing from a sheep. And what we can see from that is that pretty much all of it's less than that. And this strongly indicates rabbits, which, to be honest, if you ask, the people who look after Knockinghoo, it's not a massive surprise. They used to have so many rabbits there. It was pretty much all chalk, apparently, until they got the ferrets in, and it's now beautiful grassland. But there are warrens and there are rabbits. Obviously, going back to the Kent study, rabbits aren't like the enemy necessarily, because obviously no rabbits meant that the sward just grew too much, and there were no plants either. So there's a balance. But obviously in this case, what's eaten it, I think, is probably rabbits. And again, you could do more studies to check if that were really true. So really the end of that was that they're all successfully flowering. That's good. Rabbits are probably preventing some from setting seed. But I think what's really important to say is that this study didn't look at recruitment. I have a sample. I'm not looking at the whole population. It was only 1 year. You could have one flower go to seed and all their seeds go into, good environmental places and turn into new seeds. So, one flower can make more flowers. So as long as they don't all get eaten, there's still a chance. It'd be good to look at bare patches for germination. And also, it is worth saying that field fleawort is persisting without fences. So, it's not that you have to necessarily protect field fleawort everywhere. It is there. What we don't know is whether that population outside of the fences is just surviving as rosettes, a kind of dead population, if you like, just kind of hanging on, or whether it's actually increasing. And that's another thing that obviously could be looked at. So more monitoring needed, maybe by me. So yeah, that's the end of Leap 2. I found a direction. I did that study. It was just, I loved doing it. Also, botanically, helped me learn some plant anatomy. You've got, if you're going to start looking at plants, you're going to start learning what the different bits are. I think it also just showed me the importance of basic natural history, and just getting to know a plant. Like, you feel like it becomes like your friend. I feel very fond of this plant in a sort of weird way. It's never going to give anything back to me except the joy of knowing about it. And I think simply just going to a place again and again and spending time in one place, you notice other things too. Simply, this is my plant, this isn't my plant. But then even if you don't know the names of the others, you start to see the same things. And I think, again, that's just helped me feel less overwhelmed. It's like build my confidence, like, oh yeah, I'm seeing things. And then from there, the door opens, I think, to move on to something else. And I also think what I've reflected on is how you feel overwhelmed, or I felt overwhelmed, because you feel like, oh my goodness, all these people know everything and I don't know anything. But actually, when you start looking, there's loads of plants that people don't know anything about, or they haven't really studied. There are more unknowns than there are top botanists, I would wager. And I think that provides a good opportunity for beginners who want to have a go, like pick a plant and go and look at it and become an expert in that, or just collect some data. And it's probably almost certainly the case that whether it's for the area, the country as a whole, or just your area, no one really knows that much about it. So you'll be adding to it. And I think it's nice to know that you're learning something that's contributing. So number one, sorted, overwhelmed, not so much. good, tick, and busy. Doing that study, doing those courses, it was a busy time. You know, family and job and my life, you know, they're a thing I have. But then I started to think, well, look, I can't stop here because that's silly. What can I do to try and make sure this doesn't all just fizzle out? And so I decided that my psychological leap in that was to just say, like, a step is a step, like any step, however miniature, is a step forward. So and for me, I need to kind of do stuff to make myself accountable, to make me do it. So I've done, these are just a few things that I've done, you know, that might inspire other people I don't know. Number one is I'm going to continue with the field fleawort study because more data is great and seeing it year by year. Here we've got my daughter called Flora, no less, helping me do some measuring a few weeks back. I also contacted the Wildlife Trust, the BCN. That's not against Herts and Middlesex because that's, I live in Herts, but it's just because of where this site is. They have surveys, which, you know, I'm really interested in getting involved with, and also Rare Flora Guardians. They have a project there that they've got things coming up this year. So I'm hoping to get involved via field fleawort for that. I think also applying for funding. I did this quite a while ago, about a year ago. I applied. The Forestry Commission have a forestry and arboriculture training fund, and you know, they give you money to go on courses to do with trees and plants. It's not just commercial forestry, I should say. It's about landscape restoration and tree surveying and all sorts. And so I did a course at the Green Skills Training Academy. It was a week long, absolutely fascinating. And again, just another way to sort of feel enthused about plants and the different ways in which they play into not just the natural world, but also trying to kind of tie that in with like the importance of agriculture and the economy and all of those other things that, you know, I suppose are all part of our world as well. And then finally, I just wanted to mention finding reassuring books. I want to give a shout out to Faith Anstey and her series of books. I've got this is one of them. I've got the grasses one and the composite flowers. And I just found these, I think the whole purpose of these books was to try and not scare people. And I do find them really reassuring. They're lovely to read just as they are. They're just really nicely written, but they just make you feel like it's manageable. And again, I think these steps to not scare yourself off when you're busy and to have time is to feel like, you know, this book, for instance, like, here are 20 sedges. And it's like, okay, 20. You know, even if I only learned 5, that's 5 more than most people. So I recommend these sort of books that don't make it feel like you've got to know it all straight away, and gives you something that feels like a reasonable target. And Identiplant, big shout out, BSBI and Identiplant. I'm doing the 2025 course, so started on Monday. Haven't actually done any yet because I've been trying to prepare for this instead. But yeah, really excited about that. And who knows, I might be a FISC level 6 botanist when I'm 90. I don't know. But look, here's another start and another step forward to keep me going. So, and tick for that. Definitely not unbusy. So I have to give that an because yeah, who am I kidding? But you know, it's for fun. It's all for good causes. So I'm nearly done. The final one is too late. Maybe it's all too late. And I think you can probably tell by now, I do not think that anymore. I don't think it's ever too late. And not only because I'm only 41, I've got a lot of life left. Plants are for life. But also there's a crisis in biodiversity. There have to be people who know what's there in order to know what's going. So I think there's a responsibility there. I also think there's a diversity of skills. Having people come to this later in life is really important. You know, you can bring different things. I think as a journalist, I can bring something else as well. You know, it's all very well having detail, but I think seeing the connections and the stories and the people and the way, you know, plants interact with all of us. I think there are stories to be told about plants. I think our children need us to know, you know, working in schools, it's all very well talking about teaching the next generation, but I think if adults don't know about plants, who's teaching them? So I do think we have a responsibility to learn some plants. You don't have to know them all. I feel like I should know plants so I can talk to children about plants. And really just, it's never too late to see things differently. And, instead of seeing a green field, a kaleidoscope of plants, gems and shapes popping out, you can see the world with new eyes with botany. So yeah, that's it. Big thanks to Graham, Pete, Holly, Thomas Hesselberg, who's the course director at the Ecological Survey Techniques course at Oxford, Natural England, BSBI, and everyone else. And that's your lot. So if anyone's got any questions, happy to do it.
Thank you so much, Anna. That was fantastic. We do have some questions already in. I will say we've got, what would you prefer? Do you want a question on learning or a question on field fleawort seeds?
I don't mind. Just
Well,
make it a pick and mix. I'll take whatever.
fantastic. Okay. Just to remind people, please do add them to your the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen. You'll be able to send through your questions. So Victoria's asked, how long do field fleawort seeds last in the soil?
Oh, not long. That's a good question. There's not really a seed bank from what people know. So it pretty much seems that once the seeds have formed and blown away, they kind of pretty much need to find a little patch of bare soil in which to germinate pretty much straight off. So yeah, they don't hang around, and actually that's one of the problems. So if you have, let's say the land's neglected. I mean, Pete has done work on this, but if the land's neglected for a while and maybe the sward gets really long and everything gets overgrown, it doesn't take that many years before then there are no seeds left in the seed bank, and if the plants die, then that's your lot. So yeah, it is a problem.
Great, thank you. Victoria, same Victoria actually, says recently started trying to learn plants in my early 30s. I wonder if it's harder to learn plant ideas you get older as it is with languages. Generally not a visually observant person. It's difficult for me to tell if I'm older, if this is just not my strength. I'm happy with my progress, however, because I genuinely enjoy being out in nature. Do you think it was harder? I bet it's one of those classics, isn't it? Of you only know what your experience is.
You know what? I think the thing that I've come. So I think if you think about a kid learning a language, children learning languages, they spend like maybe 2 years before they're really saying that much, and they're just listening and they're learning and they're picking up odd words. And I think as adults, maybe we just expect too much of ourselves. I think, I've done that sometimes, think, oh, I should just know this. And of course, why should I just know this? There's thousands of plants and all these names. And so I've decided to kind of take it more. I don't think it's harder. I just think we're harder on ourselves. And also, I think unlike a language where people are maybe just feeding it to you all the time, you do have to actually actively go out and look at plants. And when we've got busy lives, like you have to make time, and I don't know, it can almost feel sort of like an indulgence to say, oh, sorry, I'm off to go and stick my bum up in a field to go and look at something. So I think it's hard because it's the time, and it's hard because, well, I suppose it's you need someone to help you. You need someone to interpret what you're seeing as well. Because I think you can go out with books, but I do think you need people to help you along your way, because else, how do you know if you're right or wrong? So I don't think it's easy, but I agree with you that it's just lovely being out in nature and having a go.
I do see what you mean there. It's not the Dunning-Kruger effect. It's as soon as you start on botany, as you were saying, you realize how much botany there could be to tackle. Or even if, like the picture you've got there, if you know what one of those plants is, you can see that there are 50 more that you don't know, and some of them are vegetative, and some of them, all the different stages that you would have to go through to become an expert.
But if you just think up all of the names, all of the words children have to learn, you just sort of think, well, they just learn a new one, and they're like, oh, what's this? It's an orange, or what's this? It's a phone, so maybe just to, again, just go step by step, and then before you know where you are, you're at the top of the hill.
And as you were saying, they've got an adult who knows, who's able to tell them.
Yeah.
Fabulous, thank you. Carol says, just to say, I'm starting Identiplant 2, very exciting. Also been looking at the PG certificate at Oxford. Finding this talk very inspiring. Thank you. Thank you, Carol.
That's right, Carol. And just do the course. That's all I can say. Really, I mean, it was brilliant. I mean, and they're not paying me, by the way. There's no like wedge of money in the post. Like it was. It was really good. Hard, but yeah.
Brilliant. Hannah says, any advice on finding people in your own area that are a similar level or age to learn with?
Well, this has partly been like one of the things I've been doing. I do think A lot of the, I mean, other people actually on this talk might be best also to advise on this, but there are lots of like local recording groups. There are local flora groups, lots of like natural history groups. And yeah, the wildlife trusts as well. And so actually there are lots of local groups that work on local nature reserves. There are also volunteer groups. I mean, I'm just thinking around me. I mean, there are lots of groups. I mean, it's hard to know until you join them what the ages will be. I mean, I think quite a lot of groups seem to meet in the week, so I think it's quite dependent on days that you work, or if you're able to work, if you work part-time. And so I think that's probably tricky. But my advice, having now got over the hump of like actually sending that email and getting in touch with people, is just to get in touch and find out, because until you make that move, I think once you've contacted other people and people say, come be with us, once you've got that and you've got those people around you, I think then it's much easier to keep going. It's when you're by yourself, it's, you know, it's like going on the gym, being on a treadmill, it's hard, you know.
Brilliant, thank you. Yes, Hannah, I'd say I'd absolutely echo that, and I'd say the BSBI website, you know, has your list of all your Vice County recorders. You can find out who your local recorder is. They might not be that point person, but they might know others who are at the same level as you, and what is on offer locally. And then even if that doesn't fit your timetable or level, you know, reaching out to those people, they'll have a network as well, and I'm sure there'll be options. We also have some good Facebook groups and things like that. There's communities on Twitter and Instagram. So even if you know, in a sad world where you might not be able to find someone close to you, there will be digitally a community that's possible to join as well. Someone down as E Cook says, Anna, come and help me survey past flowers at Pegston, Barton and Knocking Hoe this summer. They work for Plant Life and are conducting a species recovery project trying to recruit new plants from seeds in situ. They've also been
Oh,
finding Moorfield
can I?
fleawort in
Oh, sorry.
areas. Yeah. Sorry,
No,
they're just saying
carry on with the question. Sorry.
Moorfield fleawort in the areas that have been scarified than in the adjacent unscarified areas.
Oh, so there with the bare ground thing. That's really well. I'd love to e-cook. That sounds. I don't know how we would get in touch. Maybe you can email
We can
Sarah.
do a link up, absolutely.
Yeah, but yeah, I'd love to do that. And in fact, I wonder whether I've seen some of those getting collecting seeds. I've seen little bags over the past flowers, little like jewelry bags. So I don't know if that's you. But yeah, I would love to do that. Absolutely. Thank you.
Fabulous. An anonymous attendee. So I'm 70 and just started out on my journey in IDing plants with BSBI, the 2025 course. I feel better after this talk from Anna. You've given me confidence. So
Oh,
there's another
great.
ringing endorsement, Anna.
Oh, thank you. Well, look,
And
enjoy it.
I will say, amongst the attendees tonight, we have VCRs, we have people who've written BSBI handbooks. So I would say, you know, there's as much for experts to learn from beginners as there is the other way around as well. Victoria says, is there anywhere to find a list of rare plants that need to be worked on? She'd love to do that.
Oh, well, you know what? Again, there'll be people probably listening to this talk who, or you know, in the BSBI who can advise. But I'm sure there's like rare plant lists, and I think there are actual books. I think even written by the BSBI to do with rare plants. So yeah, I mean, again, not an expert, but there are people who do this, and that the Flora Guardians, like rare Flora Guardians thing with the wildlife trust. I don't know whether that's across all wildlife trusts, but I mean there must be some out there. But yeah, I don't know. You might have to ask somebody else. But that's be where I'd start. Ask the BSBI and yeah, the trust.
Brilliant. Thank you, Victoria. I've just popped in the chat, which hopefully you should be able to see a link to rare plant registers, which are something that does exist for different locations. Hopefully there's one for where you are in the country, which will give you that list of things that are local rarities. I would say, you know, you could also pick something that's very plentiful. We you know, knowing where daisies are still gives us some data that is useful. And, you know, we need an expert on all these things. So don't be, if you want to look for the needle in the haystack, please do. But sometimes finding things that are more regular is more gratifying in certain cases. Or plant atlas is another place you could look and have a look at some different species and see if there are things that have been recorded, as you were saying with the study from the 60s, Anna, that there are things that need our attention to try and re-find them, or to see, you know, and null data is equally useful in some cases. If things have disappeared from an area, then it's really important to know that.
Yeah,
Debbie
and
says,
comparison. Yeah,
sorry.
comparing as well. I mean, if you want that because I think that's the problem with data. You want to be able to see what's happening over time, and sometimes those the monitoring of certain things gets interrupted. So, you know, there's always time to start again.
Absolutely. Paying attention to anything will reap rewards in understanding more about it. Debbie says, thanks, Anna, great talk. We have a site near me with field fleawort on it. When did you do your surveys? Not thought of counting non-flowering plants before. We count the flowering ones.
Oh, okay. Oh, brilliant. Oh, yeah. And she's, I see on here, she's in East Sussex.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I went out looking, and where I sort of did a random sample of rosettes in April. And then because I didn't exactly know what was going to happen, I went back I kind of went to check at various points to see when things were flowering. So I went back throughout the season. So I went a number of times, just because at first I was thinking I might do some sort of time lapse thing to sort of see time series to see how many, you know, where the peaks were. But it all seemed to happen very quickly. And then I think I did my final one, must have been like, was in June. So April to June, and went out 6 times, I think. But some of those I probably didn't need to go out as many times, but it was again because I didn't know what I was doing. So I probably wouldn't need to go out as many times in subsequent years, is what the plan is. But yeah, but definitely look, I think because as well, it'd be really, I've written up the project, and I'm now looking at sort of doing like writing up a paper for it so that the data can be published, because obviously you sort of want the data out there. But it'd be really interesting having a similar study somewhere else, because then you can compare to say, okay, so this is the Bedfordshire, you know, study, here's one down in Eastbourne. You know, are they similar or are they different? And if they're different, then okay, well, what's different, and what does that tell us about maybe the conservation or the things that we might need to do, or what kind of mix of chalk grassland or management techniques are working best for it? So yeah, more data in different places, the better, I say.
I think you've got the bug. Brilliant. Another anonymous question. I'm a career changer studying to get into ecology, mid-40s, also intimidated by the lack of knowledge compared to others, but this has been so inspiring. Thank you.
Oh, thanks. Well, yeah. Oh, you know what? It makes me really glad to have done this, because this talk, because you know, you do think, oh, blimey, I'm giving a talk to botany people when you're not a botanist. But I think there's so many people out there who want to get involved in all sorts. It's like, you know, when you say you want to write, and I want to write a novel, and you know, I think sometimes it's just knowing that there are other people out there as well, and other people trying, and people wanting to get involved. But it just, yeah, it does feel difficult. Like you've got to be an expert immediately, and you can't be. So yeah, maybe, yeah, we need to have our own little enthusiastic but not yet very good botany group. We
Do
should start
you
our own online group.
do you find it useful to have you were saying the training courses that you'd gone on? Do you find it useful to have and you're saying steps, right? Staging posts of points where you feel you have had training rather than simply be trying to be self-taught and just learning from a book over time. You say you're doing Identiplant. Do you feel you'll gain more confidence from having gone through a course intended to give you learning in that way?
Yeah, well, I think everyone's different. I mean, I like courses. I quite like structured learning as well. But I think when you know, you do it yourself, but when you go on a structured course, you're hoping at least that the people that have come up with the course are thinking about the core aspects that are very important to learn. And I think by doing that, it also helps build your confidence in thinking, okay, got the foundations here, and you've got something to build on. And also, I think by having done it, it also, I mean, again, it's all personalities, isn't it? It depends how you feel about stuff. Some people, you know, people are all different. But I think for me, like doing something like Identiplant as well, it will make me feel like, oh, okay, I've got some of this the basics down now. Now I feel I can go and offer something to these surveys, rather than just being like, oh, don't really know what I'm doing. You know, actually feel I can go in and offer something and contribute, rather than feeling like I've got to ask all the time, you know. I mean, obviously there's always asking, but yeah, I don't know. There's just something about that makes you feel, I don't know, validated, gives you like you get your first botany badge level 1 or something.
And
Nice.
I guess Victoria asks a useful follow-on question. So I was thinking there in terms of just general interest, but she says, does the certificate in ecological survey techniques open any doors in itself? And I
Um,
assume that's from a career point of view, potentially.
yeah, I mean, obviously, I still work for the BBC, so I can't, it's not, I haven't changed careers. But I think I think what I would say about that course is during it, there's like a face-to-face week at the start, and you get to meet different scientists. There's also really interesting people who do the course. So there's like people from fascinating, like all over the world, actually, as well, who come and do the course, who work in all sorts of different fields. So that in itself is really interesting because especially if you're coming to it, like you were saying, you're maybe, coming to it as a potential change. It's hard to know what jobs are out there, so you meet lots of people who are doing things. But also, I think by doing the project, depending on the project you're doing, if you've got something that you're really interested in doing, I'm picking the Wildlife Trust again. Say you really wanted to go and work at the Wildlife Trust, well, you could approach the Wildlife Trust through the course and say, well, I really want to do a research project, and then you can do a project through them, and then you get to make contacts in your local trust, or maybe it's with Plant Life, or maybe it's with one of the other groups, or some other, or maybe you want to do a PhD and maybe you do it through a university or something. So I think it opens doors in that way, but I think you might need to think about, well, what direction you go in, and just, I suppose, think strategically about the project you choose.
Carol asks, maybe it's a suggestion. Me and my partner went on some one-day botany guided walks in South Downs, organised by Nature Trek in 2001, 2002. We had a brilliant guide who'd been a county recorder for East Sussex, very generous teacher, brilliant way of getting started. And we still recognise plants we were seeing based on the things we learned from this guide. So then again, a ringing endorsement for just a little bit of commitment, I guess, to a training session, being outside with someone who can show you the way.
Yeah, again, it's this sharing information. I think people who know about plants, who run these courses and do this and help other people, I mean, it's just, probably they'll never know, like, the effect, the person who did that walk for you, was it Carol, probably will have no idea what an impact that had. But yeah, I agree. I think those going out, and yeah, who needs to go on a safari when you can go on a plant trek? I mean, sounds good.
There's the isn't it the medical adage, is the see one, do one, teach one, or something like
Oh
that.
yeah.
It's
Okay,
it's
I'm not
never.
sure. I think I might see a bit more first, but
Well, there's always someone who's more of a beginner, isn't there?
yeah, well,
Whether it's a 9-year-old, whether it's a neighbor or someone like that. And if you can, I'm very much one for learning through showing someone else a piece of information and trying to secure it in that way. I was wondering, do you have an inkling? You might not think you'll do anything similar again, perhaps, but do you have a new favorite after-field fleawort, a new plant that's taken your interest in any
you know,
way?
no, do you know what? I think at this stage, I mean, obviously, if somebody said to me, "Oh, I don't know enough about different plants yet to be able to know that," but I think actually, I feel like there's more to be done on field fleawort first, and it would be better to, again, it's like with the busyness, you have to manage your time, you've got to fit all these different things in. And I think, well, I think it's manageable to stick with that for now. But then, who knows what's going to happen? I think just do something you love, and then you never know. So I'm going to follow field fleawort for a bit and see what happens. I'm going to keep up with what's going on in East Sussex. Hopefully something goes on there, and might be the nation's new favorite plant.
Absolutely. I have to say, I think you're brave for jumping in on a yellow plant, because when I was first starting out, apart from sort of bird's foot trefoil I liked, but everything else yellow looked all the same to me. So I veered away quite abruptly.
Yeah, get Faith Anstey's book on composites.
Mm.
That'll do you right.
Absolutely. Robin Walls, who's a very good identiplant tutor, actually, says starting at 40 is no problem. That was about the age I started serious botany as an amateur. Now I'm a VCR. Wish you were in my county. Referee for sedges and an identiplant tutor. Your enthusiasm ensures you'll get on well. Barriers are only perceived after all.
Oh yeah, well, that's really encouraging, and actually really encouraging that he started seriously as an amateur in his sport. That's what you want to hear. That's what I wanted to hear. That it's, you can do it, and if you just, I suppose it's anything. If you commit yourself to having a go, and yeah, go for it.
Absolutely.
So yeah, that's brilliant. And yeah, sorry, I don't know which county you're in, but if I'm passing,
Robin
I'll say hi.
is down in the southwest.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
And Victoria says the local Sussex Botanical Recording Society have been very welcoming. I think most counties will have them. A fellow member who lives in my town will be my new identiplant tutor, and we go out on hunts together. I'm really enjoying how the Q&A has become a sharing of positive stories that people have had and positive encounters. That's really encouraging as well.
That is what you want. That is what you want.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much, Anna. That's been a really, really lovely talk. Oh, we've still got Dorset is Robin.
Oh,
And I'm sure once we share this on YouTube, we'll also get some people in the comments potentially sharing their experiences, sharing their stories and recommendations. I'll try and make sure that I put some recommendations and links to various BSBI resources in the information section on YouTube so that people have got access to those, but there's more on the BSBI website. And thank you so much. Hopefully we can have you back down the line of more Phil Fleawort findings.
when
Maybe
I'm
once you've done
county
Identiplan.
recorder, and
Absolutely, absolutely. It's all a journey, and everyone's got to start somewhere, haven't they? And they'll all have a story that goes on and on. So yeah, thank you so much.
All right, thanks everyone.
Thanks from Hannah as well, and I'm sure thanks from the whole audience. But thank you everyone for attending. We don't have any more winter talks this year coming up planned at the minute, but if we do add any, we will be sure to let everyone know about them. But as I said at the beginning, you can find all the previous ones on our YouTube channel. And then we get into the field season. So please look at the field meetings and indoor events as well on the BSBI website and book for those. Anna's obviously filled us all with enthusiasm to go out and actually see some plants and learn from some people. So hopefully a great season ahead. Thank you very much, everyone. Good night.
Bye.